Hello YouTube, welcome back to Kind Heart Homestead. My name is Ben and I'm up here on our off-grid property in the mountains of Virginia. I'm inside of our 80 foot by 80 foot garden fence, which we recently completed. Go check out that series if you want to see how we built it. But this video is about the chicken coop. We are expecting our egg-laying chicks to arrive through USPS this week. We have an idea of how we want to set up the brooder box, which just happens to fit inside of the door to the chicken coop. Well, why waste space in any of our habitable areas or tool sheds when we can just put their brooder box in here, run an extension cord to heat them up? My original idea was to use the time that they're in the brooder box to repair and get the chicken coop up and running to its full capacity. This puts a kink in that a bit because now the brooder is going to be in there. So now today I need to figure out how to lift this up by myself, put it on the legs so it'll be more comfortable. We don't have to bend down all the way to get in there to deal with the chicks. And then once they're big enough to be outside, they can seek shade underneath their own structure. So stick around till the end and you'll get to see how I do that. Thanks. I just got to the post office to pick up our chicks. So let's see what condition they're in. We ordered our chicks from Murray McMurray Hatchery, and we were very surprised at how good of a condition these chicks arrived in. We did order ours vaccinated, and we ordered a few vitamin and mineral supplies, which are below the bedding that came in the box. So I think I should leave a positive review for Murray McMurray, especially since all of these birds arrived intact and healthy. You can see here they're full of energy. None of them seemed injured at all from the transit. So we got a free surprise chicken for ordering 15, but I'll go ahead and read to you the breeds that we got. We have 4 Partridge Rocks, 1 New Hampshire, 2 Buff Orpington, 4 Speckled Sussex, and 4 Americana. All of these are unsexed, which means that there was no protocol used to determine the gender of the chicks. With egg birds, roosters tend to be a little bit cheaper because they're less desirable. The opposite is true with meat birds because people want more meat per bird. And since we are hoping to have a sustainable flock for the first time, which means they can reproduce themselves and we can raise our own chicks, we do want roosters. So that's why we chose unsexed. But we are taking a gamble because we have no idea what ratio of males to females we will have. But a few weeks after these birds arrive, we're planning to get a first shipment of meat bird chicks. We're using a different hatchery to get Red Rangers. That's going to give us some experience dispatching and processing birds for meat. So if we have an excess of egg birds that are roosters, we could go ahead and dispatch the ones that we don't want as well and send them home to freezer camp, which is terminology that a lot of homesteaders on YouTube use to explain what happens to their meat birds. So as you can see, there's a lot more room in this tote than there is in the cardboard box that they arrived in. The heater takes up about half of their recreational space, but I expect them to be huddled under here until they can get more used to our climate. We have empty mason jar feeders and waterers, and we decided to just put those in there just to get them more used to it until we fill them up. You'll get to see that later in this video. But Angie's handling them one by one, and one of our goals is to handle these chickens regularly so they can become accustomed to being handled by humans. We've had some chicks before that were not raised that way, and they were very skittish and untrusting of us, and it was almost impossible to corral or capture them because of how scared they were. We also need to establish safe handling practices so we can teach our toddler Cedar how to hold the chicks and how to be careful around them so he doesn't step on them when wearing boots or drop things on them. So all of this is important for the future of our homestead. We want to have a sustainable flock. We want our son to enjoy raising chicks and maybe learn how to do other livestock related tasks like beekeeping on our homestead. A lot of this stuff is new to us, and we hope you can follow along on our YouTube channel. This is a vitamin supplement called Quick Chick that we got from Murray McMurray. We mix a 1/4 teaspoon with a quart of water. A common recommendation when you get chicks is to grab them and put their beak into the water so they know where their water is. Even though this is a small container and it's kind of obvious for a human, these chicks may have never drank any water before, so we definitely need to show them how to hydrate. They don't have a hen to teach them what to do, so that's up to us. I did buy this 1 foot by 1 foot paver, which you can see in the bottom under the water. I bought it just to be a stable foundation to place the food and the water on. We might not need it long term, but it's a cheap enough solution that it doesn't really bother me. Basically, I want to make sure they can't kick out enough chips to knock over the water, because in an enclosed space like this, that could flood, and then that would cause them to be standing in a big puddle. This green gel that Angie's holding is called Grow Gel Plus. She mixed it in this little empty applesauce container from its powdered form. And this supplement is supposed to be added to their first batch of food as soon as we get the chicks. So based on the instructions, we're trying to do the best that we can to make sure our birds are healthy. And this was a recommended product, so we're going to use it this once and see how it goes. And now it's time to present the chicks with their first meal. As you can see, they jump right on it. They probably don't know exactly what it is because they've never eaten before, but they did quickly learn that it was food, and they pretty much demolished that green stuff. They ate it all the first day, and then from that point forward, we started filling up the mason jar that goes on top of the feeder. So now let's see what Cedar thinks of the baby chicks.
What do you think about them? Peep. Peep.
You're drinking that water.
Hi, baby chick.
Baby chicks.
Baby Cedar.
Baby chick.
Baby chick.
Hi, baby chick.
Cedar friend.
Wow, baby chick. What's a baby chick? A baby chick.
So for the next week or so, Angie was handling them daily, putting them into this old concrete mixing bucket. This was just shallow enough to where they couldn't jump out, but where we could have good hands-on interaction with them. But they soon learned to jump over the wall, and then I had to put up a small fence as a chicken run. But as you can see, Cedar's really enjoying the chicks, and he's learning how to handle them correctly. We have a solar-powered door here that also has a solar sensor. It opens with sunrise, closes with sunset. That's going to keep them safe at night from predators. And we already have that going so they can kind of get more acclimated to the day and night cycle here. On the other end, we have an egg box, which right now I've partitioned off with this piece of sheathing so we can keep the supplies in here. But right now we've had our chicks for 1 week. Technically 8 days. Close enough. We've had them in this 17-gallon tote, and we have to store them with this piece of hardware cloth over it now because they can actually escape from that tote by jumping on top of the heater. Most of them are up there, as you can see. They like to be out there. They're not as concerned about staying in the heat, which might be because it's too hot. We have an adjustable height heater. The legs are adjustable, so as the chicks get older, we can raise it higher and higher to make the heated area less hot. And all the experts and all the articles that I've read say whether you have a heat lamp or a heat source, whatever it is, you should start it at 90 degrees when you first get your chicks. And then every week you've had the chicks, reduce it by 5 degrees per week until it gets to the temperature of your environment. And then by that point, they should be used to that temp. and then they should be fine to be without that heat source. So we're still going to have the heat source in the coop, but what we need to do is get them out of this tote because they've doubled in size over the past week. They're really crammed in there. They don't need the heat source as much as they once did, and they're going through so much food and water that I think we need to double up our little mason jar configurations, have one additional feeder, one additional water trough, and all that's going to fit a lot better in that coop. We store them overnight in here. That tote slides right under this perch, which was really lucky. I didn't design it that way. And then we have a light in there. It's not a heat lamp because they already have a heat source. But my understanding is chicks should have some light. So what we're doing today is trying to get them out of this tote. All I have to do is put down some wood chips as a bed, block off their solar door so when it opens they don't jump out. We don't have a run set up for them yet. Put their heat source back, put their food and water back. I might sprinkle some diatomaceous earth around the perimeter just in case there's any like burrowing insects that have survived the winter in there. I don't mind them foraging for bugs, but I'd rather them do it out in the yard than in their own coop. We don't really want an infestation in there. So that shouldn't take too long. I'm gonna do a time lapse and start getting the inside of the coop ready. So stick around and I'll be right back. To prepare the coop for the chickens, we started by using a shop vac around all of the surfaces inside. And now I'm sprinkling diatomaceous earth around the perimeter. And then I'm going back in with some just generic wood chips from Tractor Supply to act as their bedding. That'll make it a bit easier to get their poop out of the coop. Here is a roll of hardware cloth. I think it's spaced 1 inch square from Vever. It's kind of a flimsy material, but it should be strong enough to act as a barrier to prevent them from jumping out of this door. So as you can see, there's already some framing in place because we have this solar-powered chicken door that required some framing to screw it onto. I could just use staples, but I'm worried about when I go to remove this, that the staples might be left behind and the chickens could swallow them. So I'm using screws that are big enough to find, and hopefully big enough where a chicken won't be able to eat it. These are just generic roofing screws that have that neoprene gasket on it. I'm using some pipe strapping to reinforce the edges where I put the screws through. The screws are way smaller than the spacing on the wire mesh, so I'm basically using the pipe strap as a giant washer to spread the load of the screws across the entire surface of the mesh. And since I'm editing this about 3 weeks after we got the birds, I can tell you from experience that after removing the bottom 2 screws from each side of this, I can simply use a bungee cord to open it up like a doggy door and have the chickens go in and out. And then by removing the bungee cord, I can close it and lock them inside. That concludes the coop prep, so now after scooping some poop off of their heater, it's time to allow them to get inside their new home. We're going to move the water and feed jars and individually place them inside. This will be their habitat for the foreseeable future. Once these chicks start getting bigger, we're really going to have to consider how many we can end up keeping. So either send the rest off to freezer camp or maybe sell them to a neighbor. But we've had, I think, 3 to 4 hens in here comfortably before. I have that singular perch going across the middle. And it only took a few days for these chicks to figure out how to get up onto that perch. You might have noticed earlier that they quickly figured out how to jump up on top of that heater. While jumping off of the heater, they could jump right up onto the perch. We don't know exactly where they sleep. I'm sure most of them huddle under the heater for warmth. But throughout the day, I've seen up to 4 of them at once on that perch. And after 3 weeks, they pretty much quadrupled in size, and I got rid of that partition in the background so they could move into the nesting box, which we put wood shavings down on. But we also had to get rid of the food silo and the extension cord spool. Those we just sort of place outside to get them out of the way. That concludes this week's episode, and I'm glad you guys were here to experience the chicks firsthand with us as we expand our homesteading family. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to the channel and go ahead and like this video. We're homesteaders who recently moved up to the mountains of Virginia, and we're learning about this new climate zone while we get to know our neighbors and our surroundings, and we're building everything from scratch. We just started our house build, and you guys can look forward to videos about that construction over the next few years. So I hope to see you back here next time on Kind Heart Homestead. Thanks for watching.